I'm going to give it in three basic parts, three sections, an introduction, and then three parts, okay? So this is the introduction. It's called Starting from Where We Were Left Off, and you'll understand what I mean by this as we go on. But when I say starting from where we left off, I mean this is actually a continuation of my work that I've done in other areas, like in What on Earth is Happening podcast series, on my radio shows, the interviews that I do on other people's shows, my video presentations, etc. I always give this caveat at the beginning of all my presentations. There's 5 essential boxes for human consciousness. There's 5 things that shut human consciousness down. 5 models that attempt to keep people rigidly inside of their walls, okay? And if you're inside these boxes, you're not going to expand your awareness to understand the actual truth of what's going on in our world. And those 5 boxes are politics. Okay, so if anybody identifies with left or right, conservative, Republican, liberal, Democrat, etc., going to be sorely disappointed with this presentation. Religion in general, and by this I mean the cultural religions of the world. Scientism, not what I call real science, but what I call ultra-rigid skepticism in the form of quote-unquote science that's peddled for modern science in today's world. And of course the New Age movement, which I've done a lot of recent exposure of. The 5th one is the monetary system in general, the general belief in money, period. So if anybody's coming at their looking at the world, their whole paradigm or worldview from any one of these boxes, good luck. Because you're already putting yourself in a limited confines, and I don't think, many people who are looking at reality from one of these 5 perspectives is going to take a whole lot away from this presentation, because it's coming at it from a closed-minded perspective to begin with. And again, I would recommend not trying to filter this presentation through any one of these boxes. If you do, you're not going to get much value out of it. What I highly recommend is to try to shed these as much as possible, to the extent that any of you here today or watching on video are in these boxes. And to really do that, what you're really saying is, I'm not going to stay in my comfort zone. I'm actually going to search for the truth that lies beneath. Okay? That's not really contained in any of those, that goes way beyond any of those 5 boxes. All right? So, with that in mind, starting from where we left off, my other work really covers that the current human condition is slavery. Okay? When people ask me what my work is about, I tell them it's about slavery and how to end it. Okay? Slavery and how to end it. And that usually gets people's attention. That perks them up a little bit and, puts them in a mode that, they can understand where I'm coming from usually. And for people who don't understand this is the case of the world, they're also going to find this presentation difficult. All right? So a kind of a second disclaimer. For those who do not already deeply understand that the current human condition is slavery, and I'm starting with that as matter of fact. I'm not asking anyone to believe that. I'm telling you it's true. I'm stating it factually. That's the case. Okay? I fully recognize that at this point in time, if you don't understand our condition as slavery, you may not even be able to consider with an open mind much of the information in this presentation due to a lack of prerequisite knowledge. Meaning, if you don't understand that, I'm telling people up front, you haven't done your homework, and you don't understand where we're at right now. So therefore, hearing what I'm about to say, this is like the advanced class, let's put it that way, okay? So if people don't already understand this, it's going to be very difficult to hear what I'm going to say here today, all right? For those who haven't come to that understanding, this is a great site. This is my website. Go up to this site, listen to the podcasts in order, and your entire paradigm will shift if you have an open mind. If you could take that information in with an open mind and an open heart, and do your own due diligence, I think you'll start to understand the big picture of what's going on this planet. So check out whatonearthishappening.com. In whatonearthishappening.com, the main question that I have delved into up to this point is, why is this the current human condition? Why is the current human condition slavery? Trying to get at the underlying causal factors that have led to the condition that we are in now. Okay? So all my previous work has dealt with that question. Why are we in a condition of slavery? All right? And the answer to that is provided on that site. Now, what I'm going to do here is go even beyond that question here today. But I want to just summarize briefly, as quickly as it can be summarized. I'm going to attempt to summarize the answer to that question in basically 4 short sentences or 5 sentences, okay? The reason that humanity is enslaved is it does not understand natural law. It does not understand the spiritual laws that govern the universe, okay? And I call this natural law, this body of laws that ultimately govern behavior. I group it under this umbrella term, natural law, okay? Here's what natural law essentially is. Natural law is the body of universal, non-man-made, binding and immutable laws which act as the governing dynamics for the consequences of human behavior. Now that's, you know, a lot to say there in one breath. I say it's non-man-made laws that already exist in creation that ultimately act as the governing dynamics for the behaviors that we choose to enact. All right, that's what natural law is. Now, humanity doesn't understand natural law in the aggregate. There are individuals who do, but the aggregate body of humanity is completely ignorant of natural law. It's why we're enslaved. Understanding natural law, what is meant by that? It means truly having conscience, which is the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between morally right behavior and morally wrong behavior. That is what it means to understand natural law, okay? Living in harmony with natural law, okay, is different than understanding it. One can even understand it and not actually accept it and enact it and live in harmony with it. Living in harmony with it means exercising one's conscience, or in other words, willfully choosing morally right behavior over morally wrong behavior, once that difference is clearly understood. When human beings, in the aggregate, the species, lives in harmony with natural law, and are therefore moral, again in the aggregate, it doesn't mean just the individual. When the aggregate of the species lives in harmony with natural law and therefore exhibit moral behavior, they become and remain free. When human beings live in opposition to natural law and are therefore immoral, they become and remain enslaved. That's how the dynamic of freedom versus slavery works, and this is what I call the law of freedom. That is the law of freedom. It has everything to do with morality and is totally inextricably connected with morality and can never be separated from it. Okay? That's natural law in a nutshell, in about as quickly as it can be, you know, condensed. I also talk about this concept, the one true divide, that there is only one true divide that separates humanity into 2 distinct types of individuals. The criterion for this divide is whether or not an individual believes in authority and therefore believes that there is legitimacy to slavery. Someone who believes in authority believes that there is legitimacy to slavery. Again, I'm not asking anyone to believe this. I'm telling you that's the fact of the matter. That is the reality. Okay? And this is where my other work leaves off, explaining that this is the divide that needs to be bridged. All the other things that allegedly separate humanity, race, class, sex, religion, all this, they're all divide and conquer strategies. This is the real divide, where there really is 2 groups of actual different kinds of people on the earth. That's the real divide, and that's the criterion that separates them, whether they believe in authority vested in human beings. These are the 2 groups of people that embody the divide, okay? These are memes that I put in another presentation of mine. The statists and the anarchists, okay? The statists, exemplified by a police officer, say, you know, with this meme saying, statism is the brilliant idea that we give a small group of people the right to kidnap, imprison, harass, steal from, and kill people so that we can be protected from people who kidnap, harass, steal, and kill people, okay? And you know, the meme that I found, this great meme with the anarchists represented by, you know, the archetypal figure of Jesus, saying that I'm an anarchist, but most of my followers are statists, meaning I don't believe in slavery, yet most of my followers do. So really what we're really talking about, these are euphemisms, okay? These are just euphemisms, words that we use as euphemisms. This is what it really means. This is the real meaning. This is someone who supports slavery, and this is someone who opposes slavery. That's all it really comes down to. Those are the two kinds of people in the world. The supporters of slavery, whether they understand that that's the case or not, and those who oppose slavery in all of its forms, in which case I am. I oppose slavery in all of its forms. Okay? What this presentation is going to be about is what happened, okay, such that we do not understand natural law. Why are we in the mental state or the condition that people do not have a fundamental grasp of that truth that I just put up there? And I'm not telling you, again, it's true because I believe it. I'm telling you it's true because that is the universal law of creation. And all anybody can ever do is discover it or not understand it. It is there, and what I just stated is true. Okay? So, what we're going to look at here today is why are most people so unconscious that they don't understand that? Okay? Why do they refuse to live in harmony with natural law? They refuse to understand natural law. Why are they so unconscious that they fail to recognize the rampant presence of evil in the modern day, in their midst, all around them, and they just ignore it? Why are they so unconscious that they will willfully participate in such evil, either directly or indirectly? Okay? And this is where my other presentations have left off. And I've been very tight-lipped about the things I'm going to talk about here today so far. Okay, because this has all been preparing the way for this understanding of the 6 years of work that I've been doing over the last 6 years. That's a long time to stay tight-lipped about something too. Okay, so my other work has left off with this understanding. I'm sorry, I accidentally backed up the slide here. Let me just move this forward again. I apologize for that. This whole psychological framework, this model that I've built up in my other work, I've termed the reasons why we're in this condition, the tree of evil. Okay, that's what this right side of this slide represents. Okay, now you have to envision this model. At the top of the model, at the top of this tree of evil, there's all the leaves and the twigs. Okay. And these are the fruits. These are the expressions that happen after the fact, okay? And the top expression is willful ignorance. People refusing to look into the truth for themselves. Willfully staying ignorant, okay? Now people will say, well, isn't that the root? Isn't that the root cause? No. That's the expression that follows the root cause. Well, what lies beneath that? What's the bigger branches of this tree of evil? Beneath willful ignorance, people have a fundamental fear of owning their own personal responsibility. We don't want to be truly responsible for our own behavior. We want to pass the buck. We want to pass responsibility on to others and say, no, this isn't us doing this to ourselves. It isn't our responsibility. It's someone else's responsibility. Okay, so the fear of owning personal responsibility goes deeper in the psychological framework for why people are willfully ignorant. Now, something underlies that. There's a reason people have fear of owning their own personal responsibility. Okay, and that is what I would call the trunk of the tree of evil. The trunk of the tree is self-loathing. Humanity is a species that hates itself, ultimately. Deep, deep, deep down inside, nested into the deep underneath of the subconscious mind, we are a self-loathing species, okay? And that's due to a lack of self-respect. We don't have self-respect because we don't have enough understanding of self. We don't have self-knowledge. We don't have enough understanding of consciousness. Now, what we're going to talk about here today is what is the root of the tree of evil. At the very bottom of this psychological framework, something underlies all of this. A question, and again, I've asked people, please hold your questions till the end, and we will adjourn to the beer garden on South Street, Brauhaus, to take questions and have more discussion. But I will occasionally ask the audience a question, okay? Can anyone please tell me what general group of people this psychological framework is typical of? In general, there is a class of human beings that display just being ignorant. fearing to own their own personal responsibility, and lacking a lot of self-respect for themselves because they don't really know a lot about themselves yet. Children. Thank you, sir. Children. This exemplifies someone who is not psychologically mature, okay? Who has not psychologically and spiritually grown up, okay? So this is the group that we're really talking about. We're not talking about actual children. Again, we're talking about psychological children, spiritual children. Questions at the end, please, okay? Now, what kind of children display these particular symptoms psychologically, if you will? Okay, now, actually, that's a good answer, because I would say that gangsters and wannabe gangsters exemplify this psychological issue that I'm going to be talking about. The answer here is abandonment issues. Parental abandonment issues. People who have in some form or another been let down or completely abandoned by the parental figures in their lives. And I would suggest everybody in this room and everybody watching has abandonment issues in some form or fashion or another, whether they even want to admit it or not. On my podcast in the future, I'll be talking about my own abandonment issues, because I had them. If you had them, you have them. And it means you're either dealing with them and you're healing them, or you're not. Okay? And largely what this presentation is going to be about is those who are not dealing with them and not healing them. Okay? I have come to realize that the biggest problem anywhere in the world is that people's perceptions of reality are compulsively filtered through the screening mesh of what they want and do not want to be true, which is the worst way to research or look for the truth about anything. Okay? If I wanted this to be true, okay, I'd have to be pretty crazy. All right? I don't want what I'm about to come up here and tell you today to be true. I go wherever the truth or the research or the facts lead, and then adjust my perception accordingly, not the other way around. Trying to stuff the truth into your perceptions, good luck with that. Enjoy what you get on the other side of that, because what you're going to get on the other side of that is no clarity, no understanding. Okay? You have to go where the truth leads, and you have to put aside your personal perceptions, this screening mesh, as Walton calls it, of what you want to be true. We're not the arbiters of truth, folks. The truth exists independently from us, and it is there for us to discover or to remain ignorant of. And keep that in mind as a theme going forward. All right? Another quote from the spiritualist Anthony DeMello, he said, "It is a great mystery that though the human heart longs for the truth, in which it alone finds liberation and delight, the first reaction of human beings to truth is one of hostility and fear." And I expect it to be no different. I expect to go into a long line of researchers who have been attacked and have had people just totally launch ad hominem attacks against them instead of looking into the information that they're talking about. Fine. I'll accept going onto that chopping block with great pride, because I'll join a host of characters that actually have character, okay? And I'll go into that group gladly, okay? Yes?
There are seats up here. We can fill in along the wall.
Yep, still a couple of seats up here and back here, so come on up. So with that in mind, what we're actually going to be talking about here is occult information. How many people here expected today to be hearing about the occult coming to this meetup? Oh, great. So, okay, that surprises me, because that's good. More and more people, I think, are starting to understand what this is really about, that this is about the occult, and this is about occulted knowledge. But, you know, going into the derivation of words, the etymology of words, what occult actually means is, it's derived from the Latin adjective occultus. Occultus means hidden, okay? Occultus, the Latin adjective, means hidden. And the Latin adjective occultus, in turn, comes from the Latin verb occultare. Occultare, as a verb, means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret. So when we're talking about information that has been occulted, you know, when people hear the word occult, they think about stuff like this. And I'm not telling you that's not part of the occult, because it is, but we're really trying to get at the root meaning of the word, and the root meaning of the word is hidden. Occult means hidden knowledge. Knowledge that has been occulted has been hidden from other people's view for a reason, okay? And that reason is as follows. Such knowledge has been deliberately hidden in order to create and maintain a power differential between those who hold that knowledge and those who are ignorant of it. We've all heard the phrase, knowledge is power. Okay? Well, when a certain group of people have a lot of knowledge and they hide that or hold it back or dissuade other people from looking into that body of knowledge, that's creating a power differential between those two groups, between the knowledgeable and the ignorant. So you have to look at it as a hierarchical pyramid structure. Okay? At the top of the pyramid, there is knowledge being held by few people, and they're exploiting those at the bottom of that hierarchical structure or pyramid which lack that knowledge, the ignorant masses. And I would suggest the people who are these debunkers, who I'm going to talk about a little later on, they're psychological children who don't want to deal with the implications of this information. That's all. They don't want it to be true. That's the only reason they continue to debunk it. It's not that they want to look and find the truth. They don't care about what the truth is. They want to keep their tenure in their universities, in academia. Okay? They want their books to continue to sell because they're looked at as the leading authorities on the particular subjects that they talk about. They don't give a damn about what's true at all. At all. Okay? So with that, many people don't even want to admit psychopathy exists. I get emails constantly. You're wrong. There's no such thing as psychopathy. There's no such thing as psychopathy. This is an invented human neuroses or disease, just like all the other things in the DMA. Okay? And it's all there to just get people to believe that they have these mental disorders like ADHD, etc. And people can't see with their own eyes that psychopaths really exist. They don't want to admit it. Again, it's coming from the perspective, I want to be the arbiter of truth because I'm not comfortable with that existing. I don't want it to be true. Okay? Now, even the people who admit psychopathy does exist, and psychopathy, we'll get into the characteristics, but they never wrestle with that horrible question. Why does it exist? That's the implications no one wants to deal with. Why are we on a planet where people with these characteristics exist at all and are born? I'm talking about primary psychopathy, being born like this. And believe me, there are people who are born like this, born that way. So there's three possibilities. Well, either God did it to us, and I mean the God of creation, just made humanity this way and, you know, put this other subspecies that's an interspecies predator on the earth with us to just have its way with the normal humans, okay? And that would be an interesting dynamic to wrestle with, you know, implication-wise on its own. The other possibilities are we might have done it to ourselves, okay? But in that case, you'd have to say we were ancient geneticists and we did this to ourselves for some crazy reason. That doesn't resonate with me. The other thing is it happened as a result of this ancient hybridization that was done to us by another species. I don't really think you can have any other possibility where people say, oh, it just crept into the human genome by genetics. You know, I don't see evolution just doing that naturally. You know, having a subspecies with all these characteristics, which are the characteristics of a psychopath. Let's look at what they are. The absence of any conscience or empathy, inability to feel, and there's a reason for this. The psychopath has a malfunctioning midbrain. The midbrain, which is called the limbic system, doesn't work normally. It's electrochemically malfunctioned in comparison to a normal human brain. So when the midbrain or the limbic system is malfunctioned, it doesn't produce the chemical, the neuropeptides that go into the bloodstream and enable the human physiology in the body to feel emotions, to actually feel what we do to others. That doesn't work in the psychopath. That part of the biochemical interaction between the brain, the neuropeptides, the human nervous system is broken in the limbic brain in a psychopath. It's broken from birth. This is also, just so we're clear, this is also something that is capable of being created through social conditions. Social conditions can breed secondary psychopathy. I'm not talking about secondary psychopathy. People being in a situation that puts them under such chronic stress that their brain starts to work like a psychopath, a real psychopath's brain. There's two kinds of psychopaths. Primary, meaning born that way, and secondary, meaning you become that way through social conditions that you can't escape from. Okay? I'm talking about primary psychopathy here. Why would there be a class, a subclass of the human species that is born without the ability to empathize with their fellow human beings? Okay? So they're strongly immoral, aggressive, callous, and cunning. They are very adept at manipulating others. They are willing to engage in criminal conduct to get their way. They possess a deceptive ability to appear outwardly benevolent and to fake or feign normal human emotions. They're good actors. They can role play and pretend to have normal human emotions, which they absolutely do not feel and are incapable of feeling. Okay? They have a complete absence of guilt or remorse for the harm they cause to others. They deny their behavior, they rationalize their behavior, and they transfer blame to others. They have complete contempt for other people's feelings. Doesn't matter how you feel, especially even if I, cause you to feel that way as a result of my behavior, I could care less. Pathological liars refuse to accept responsibility for any of their behavior, and they believe that they will never be brought to justice by anyone for all of the wrongdoing that they do. That's what a psychopath is. And I'm telling you, they're here, they're among us. Clinical psychologists place the number between 1% and 4%. I disagree with those numbers. I think they're much over-exaggerated. I think real primary psychopaths, I think, are less than 0.5%. Maybe even less than that in the human population. Maybe 0.1%. Okay? But what I am going to tell you is there's many secondary psychopaths in the human population, maybe upwards of 15 to 20%. Okay? A lot of secondary psychopaths are roaming the earth, all right, because of the social conditions of the earth. Very few primary psychopaths. But I'm suggesting that what may have created psychopathy, along with the other 4,000 human genetic defects, you have things like, different neurological disorders, different, birth degenerative disorders, things like Huntington's disease, Alzheimer's disease. All of these different disorders in the human genome, the explanation for these may be because of this genetic modification. When you do a genetic splicing imprecisely, because you don't really care about what you're making, it's something you're using and then getting rid of. That's how we really looked at as, all right? You're not going to do it with atomic precision. It wasn't done with atomic precision. It was done the same way modern human geneticists do genetic splicing, which is with chemical cultures. My friend was a genetics engineer for some time. He told me, you put it in the culture, you add whatever agent or reagent you're adding to break it down and to create the separation or the splicing, and then you have to let it express. That's how modern genetics is done. You're not splicing things at an atomic level that preserves the exact base pairs of the DNA at an atomic level. Therefore, all kinds of bit errors are going to creep into that code when you do it in this imprecise fashion. That's going to create different unforeseen circumstances, and I feel human psychopathy is one of them. I think that's what the origins of psychopathy are. Primary psychopathy. This explains all the accounts that are seemingly inexplicable in traditional religious beliefs. In biblical faith, the Old Testament punishing God. This is these beings who had to have their will done exactly as they wanted by their slave species. Look at the very specific, detailed things that God asks human beings to do in biblical accounts. Bring them certain kinds of foods, do certain kinds of exacting work. Why would the God of creation give us orders like that? The gods were pretty vain and wanted their will served at all times and places. So they would have asked human beings to do all kinds of vain things for them. You see like the biblical account of David and Goliath. I believe this is human starting to fight back against the demigods who were put in place to control them more viciously. Modern religion, I think, is a holdover from the days when these gods put certain human beings into positions of power and created priest classes so that they could control the overall populations more effectively. And who did they ask them to worship as their gods? They asked them to worship these extraterrestrial beings. Because if you did what they wanted, they would bestow favors upon you. And you would get a little bit more food, or a little bit more blankets, or a little bit better housing. Okay? If you just did their bidding and didn't ask questions and went along with everything they asked you to do like a good little slave. Okay? And, you know, I'm going to take a lot of pot shots at people in this presentation. I don't care who it offends. I don't care if it offends you in the room. I don't care if it offends whoever's watching. I'm going to get scathing toward a couple of few groups of people in the world who I think are keeping the dynamic of human slavery in place. And religionists are one of them, particularly priest classes, okay? Because where are these people talking about the police state that's running rampant in our culture? Where are these people talking about the wrongness of slavery that's running rampant in our culture, okay? Where are they? No, they won't talk about that. You know, they just want you in their churches and synagogues and mosques to throw as much money into their system as they can. And they're not going to talk out against Big Daddy government. Not a bit. Because then they lose their 501c3 statuses, you know? And then people come after them for the taxes like they do everybody else. Okay? So these aren't holy men. They're nothing of the kind. Nothing of the kind. The people who are doing the real great work to warn humanity about the slavery that's ongoing and needs to end are the holy men of this world. Not these people. Not a bit. Okay? And I mean, if you can't see the similarity, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you if you can't see it. Could it be any more clear that they're trying to emulate the gods? You know? You know, that speaks for itself. If I need to say anything there, something's really wrong. This is where the mystery tradition, mystery schools, and secret societies of the modern day come from. Because the gods created these temples of knowledge, centers of knowledge that they gave some knowledge to few people in order to control the masses of people. A hierarchical structure based on occulted information, occulted knowledge. Okay? So this is where modern secret societies come out of the ancient world to us from. And then, of course, from there, you get the dark occult. You get Satanism and dark Luciferianism and the Order of Death and the Bohemian Club, etc. The dark variant of the Illuminati, if you will. Okay? Which means illuminated ones. They're nothing of the kind illuminated. They're frauds and fakes. The real illuminated people are the people who are trying to tell people the truth about what's going on this planet because they have that knowledge. And they're trying to share it with people. They're the illuminators, those who bring that light to other people. So calling these clowns the illuminated ones is a misnomer. All right? But, you know, they're Satanists most certainly. All right? And that's where these groups come out of. Again, coming out of knowledge being held and preserved for the few in the ancient world to control, and then they come forward through into the modern world as these different dark orders. The obsession with gold, okay? And just the concept of money in general. People never ask, where did money come from? You know where money came from? The gods gave us the concept of money. They gave us the concept of money to keep people fighting with each other and create a class system so that there would be a hierarchical order of control, which they wanted. Okay? We don't know why they valued gold. You know, Sitchin and other researchers have, you know, postulated that they were trying to do something technological in their atmosphere. I don't know whether I buy that explanation or not. Look, gold is eternal. You could put gold at the bottom of the ocean. You bring it up, it's like the day you put it, you can bring it up 10,000 years later, it's going to be like the day you put it there. What is that? We don't even understand the real properties of gold. We don't understand what this substance even is or how these beings used it. And there's accounts these beings used it internally as well. Many of the pharaonic accounts in ancient Egypt, these demigods consumed the gold that they made in monoatomic form. we don't really understand the essential qualities of what gold is or how these beings used it, but they considered it valuable. So they transferred this value to the human populations. Whenever you went into all ancient cultures that had mined gold, smelted it, and you ask yourself, why would they have mined and smelted gold? Do you know how difficult that process is to do? The amount of work it takes to even get a little bit of gold out of ore and then smelt it? Why would an ancient non-technological culture have any reason to do that or desire to do that work? The gods wanted them to do that work for reasons we don't fully understand. Okay? And then since they found it so valuable, that value was transferred to these ancient people who did their work for them. Okay? And that gives us the so-called intrinsic value of gold today. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as intrinsic value of gold. If you believe that, you are under mind control. Okay? Here's what intrinsic value is. If there's a natural disaster and you are living off the land with no technology, what can you do with the item that you have? That's called intrinsic value. If you can eat it, it has intrinsic value. If you can wear it, it has intrinsic value. If you can shelter yourself with it, it has intrinsic value. If you can defend yourself with it, it has intrinsic value. By the definition of the word, intrinsic means naturally occurring, having a natural utilization. There is no such thing as the intrinsic value of gold. The people who believe that are people who believe in monetary systems, which are an illusion and a religion. There's no such thing as the intrinsic value of gold unless you are in a highly technological civilization in which this rare earth metal is employed in technology. Okay? Other than that, there's no intrinsic value for gold. We use it in computers and other modern technologies, but nowhere else. You can't eat it, you can't shelter yourself with it, you can't defend yourself with it, and therefore it's not intrinsically valuable. Yet, this system that came to us from these beings has become the #1 religion. And that's why I put it, when I showed the 5 boxes for consciousness, that's in the middle because that's the one that binds all the other religions together. It is the #1 religion from the movie They Live, which I'll talk about later. That's humanity's God. And when gold and paper money become the god of a species, you better believe that they're going to remain enslaved. And maybe at that point, it's deserved. Okay? So, and I know that'll offend a lot of people. And go ahead and get it. My tagline in my radio series is, get as offended as you like. Because I don't sugarcoat things or hold back. Okay? That's not my tact, and it will never be my tact. All right? So, kingship and royalty came from these extraterrestrial beings. Again, they appointed the kingship and the rulership in the ancient world to maintain control over the populations and act as intermediaries between the gods. Again, look, that's what religion is. A priest is an intermediary between people and God, supposedly. We go through him. Well, that's what the religions of the ancient world were. The royalty of the ancient world were often demigods. That's why royalty is obsessed with bloodline. And that's why it's propagated through bloodline. It's not propagated through knowledge or what you know how to do or if you're a better person or a more moral person than someone else. It's propagated through your blood, genetics, bloodline. The demigods had more of the god's blood in them, and therefore they were royalty, seen as royalty on the earth. And that's where all of these systems come from. Hence, the divine right to rule. I have a divine right to rule as the king because my blood is purer than your blood. I have more of the God's blood in me than you have in you. Therefore, I have the divine right to rule over you. Here's the question I want you to keep putting in your mind with all of this is, does it make sense? Does it make more sense than anything we've been told? Does it make more sense than anything we've been told about where these systems came from? And to me, yes, it does. And again, of course, I'll be attacked for that, and the debunkers will have a field day and go right ahead. The system of religion and kingship is known as the Old World Order. This was how the ancient rulers maintained control over the people. Up at the top of the pyramidal hierarchical structure where there is knowledge, and down here there's ignorance, which keeps the system in place. you had the king. The king or the priest, however you want to look at it. The king or the priest king, you know, any way you want to look at it. He ruled unquestioningly. All authority is vested in him. So this is the concept. The old world order was the concept of authority vested in one being, who ruled over all the others. This system is based entirely in violence, because that's how a hierarchy of authority is maintained, through violence. And it is built upon the erroneous, meaning completely untrue, wrong notion, and the dogmatic belief. It's a dogmatic belief system, okay, which is a religion. That one person is the master who possesses the moral right to issue commands, while all others are that being's subjects who have the moral obligations to obey the commands issued by the master. Okay? That was called royalty or kingship in the ancient world. And really, we still have kingships today. There are still kings in other countries, okay, and queens in other countries. Instead of this euphemism called the old world order, or even authority or kingship, who could tell me what this really is? Slavery. Let's stop euphemizing and call things what they really are. This is called slavery, okay? Backed by violence, and it's not anything else, never was anything else, isn't anything else today, and is never going to be anything else. It's called slavery, if you're being honest with yourself, which most people aren't. Okay, now, the reason I'm hammering that home so deeply is because we're going to look at the New World Order now and see what that is. Okay, so the New World Order is based on the concept of government. Okay, and government means, from the Latin, and yes, this is the etymology, and yes, this is what it means. If you disagree with that, go and see my podcast on New Age bullshit, which is podcast number 143 on my website. Okay. Government comes from the Latin verb gubernare, sometimes rendered in more modern or non-classical Latin as governare. Okay? Gubernare means to control. And then the second part of the word ment comes from the Latin noun mens mentis, which means mind. When you put them together, the word government literally means to control the mind. It is mind control. To believe in it, someone has to be under mind control, because they have to believe in the erroneous concept of authority backed by violence. Okay? That's what government is now, always has been, and always will be, whether anybody understands that or not. Okay? Now, this is what the New World Order is based upon. We saw what the Old World Order was. It was ruled by one, a priest or a king. Okay? The New World Order is, you have a government on top of the structure. So now we're doing, it's the same exact structure, ruled by violence and built on the false claim of authority over other people, okay? And all you're doing is you're divesting that so-called authority, that power, okay, granted to the king, and you're just divesting it into a few people in the institution known as government. So this is authority vested in a group. The system is based entirely in violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief, or the religion, that a certain group of people are masters who possess the moral right to issue commands, while all other beings are subjects who have the moral obligation to obey the commands of the master. Once again, if you think there's any difference between this and the Old World Order, these are called opposames, as David Icke likes to call them. They're not opposites. They're the exact same thing, euphemized with a different word. It's all language. It's all word games, word magic. Okay? Ultimately, it's the exact same core thing, and that's called slavery. Nothing has changed. The Old World Order has just morphed into the New World Order because people stopped believing overtly enough in the religious institutions and in the institution of kingship. That's it. So now, the people in control of these institutions just said, well, let's just morph it and say, we're going to divest it into the hands of a few, just like their gods did. They set up these institutions in the ancient world to divest the power and stop making the people think, oh, it's only a few of these beings that clearly are not us, ruling over us, and therefore they more easily got the populations to go along with their slavery. The same thing is ruling the earth today, and nothing has changed in 200,000 years. Let's stop euphemizing these things and calling them what they are, okay? It's not kingship. It's called slavery ruled by one. It's not government. It's called slavery ruled by few. If you're being honest with yourself. There's that caveat. If you're being honest with yourself. Most people aren't being honest with themselves. They're lying to themselves because they hate themselves. Because they're dealing with unresolved psychological dynamics, okay, that bring up self-loathing and the refusal to accept personal responsibility, and no one wants to hear that spoken. Well, I'm going to speak it. I'm going to speak it. Let's go back to the tree of evil and really understand this psychological framework, okay? In light of the quote-unquote troubled human past, and that's the understatement of all time, I was thinking about, instead of calling this cosmic abandonment, it should be called cosmic rape, you know, or maybe cosmic partial birth abortion might be more accurate, all right? But, you know, admittedly, we have a troubled past. So in light of this troubled past and the origins of modern cultural institutions, the question is, do we now have a psychological framework through which to better understand the behavior of certain groups of human beings? Can we put certain behavioral groups of people into a certain context behaviorally to better understand why they behave the way that they behave? So look at this tree. Willful ignorance, driven by the fear of owning your personal responsibility to do the right thing, driven by underlying in the subconscious mind self-loathing due to a lack of self-respect, okay, because we've always been a slave race, and that's so nested in our ancestral DNA that we think it should continue for some reason, okay? And then underneath that, the cosmic abandonment issues that we have been dealt with as a result of the events of the past. All right, let's look at certain groups of people. Thank you. I have a half an hour left. I'll try to speed through this. All right, rigid skeptics like this guy who's burning in hell right now, if there is a hell, guaranteed he's there. You know who that is? That's Philip Klass. Okay, the biggest so-called ufology debunker of all time, who was, now it has finally come out, was on the payroll of the CIA and was working for the CIA the entire time he was doing all this debunking work. Okay. The biggest clown possibly in the history of the world, this punk, okay? All right? Because he'll say he's a skeptic, but he's nothing of the kind. Nothing of the kind, because if his daddy tells him it's true, well, then I believe daddy. I believe the CIA, because that's my daddy. This is how these nested psychological abandonment issues work. I can't look into the truth for myself, no matter how much evidence. Evidence be damned. Evidence be damned. Daddy told me it's this way. Okay? So I'm skeptical about everything. Unless, of course, the government or government-funded scientists say it's true. Then I'm a true believer. I'm a true believer because mommy and daddy told me it's true. Right. How about religionists in general, the followers of religion? The priest class we already talked about. Okay? The followers of religion I call the children of the gods, where Jay had a great term for it, the children of hierarchy. These are the people who love hierarchy. They love prostrating themselves before their gods, as if the God of creation would ever demand that of us. Because he's that vain, he, she, it is that vain, that force is that vain. No, the gods were that vain and cruel and sadistic. The God of creation is nothing like that. Okay? So, you know, all religion is about is surrender. It's about surrender. It's not about actually getting to the truth. It's about accepting what we tell you. Okay? So, we believe what we're told to believe. That is so much easier than developing critical thinking skills. That's what religion is. I'm just going to cut right to the core of what's going on psychologically with people like this. And I don't care who it offends. Okay? You listening out there, I don't care if you're offended by it. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what's true. Okay? Believers in government, or what I call the supporters of slavery. Look, in all honesty, we even have to drop this term statist. We got to start calling these people what they are. They're supporters of slavery. That's what these people are. Okay, and I don't care what brand they come in, left, right, center, or otherwise. Okay, the Democrat, the liberal, the political leftist, he she wants government to be our caretaker from cradle to grave, thinks that government should act as provider and nurturer like an archetypal mother. This is because there's abandonment issues in the motherly sense that are going on in most people like that. And if you go into people who are political leftist, liberal, Democrat types, okay, and yeah, I am generalizing, okay, you will find people with mommy issues, okay? You will find people with mommy issues because what they want the government to be is the caretaker that's absent. So they want it to be mommy. I want mommy. And now government's going to be mommy. Okay? Now let's look at the opposite side, the opposame. Okay? As David Icke calls it, the Republican, the conservative, the political right-winger. Okay? They want government to be our protector. We want a strong government. It's got to be our protector. Police the world and keep us safe. Right? From cradle to grave, it's going to keep us safe, like an archetypal father figure, like the powerful, protective father figure. Well, just like the Democrats and the political leftists have mommy issues, all the people on the right side, who this is what they think government should exist to do, have daddy issues. They want government to be daddy. Okay? That's the underlying psychological issues that these people have and don't even know they have. They don't even know they have these issues. All right? It's mommy and daddy didn't pay enough attention to me. So I want mommy and daddy present now. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. And look, let's not leave out the minarchists. Okay, let me just go back one there. The minarchist, the constitutionalist. This is the libertarian. I only want a little bit of government. I want government to beat me 3 days a week instead of 7. Whip me 3 days a week, master, not 7, please. The plantation on the other side of the hill only whips their slaves 3 days a week. Here we get whipped 7 days a week. So I want to go over to that plantation. I mean, this is absurdity. It's absurdity. And again, I don't usually speak that strongly out against these types of groups because they're almost there, but they're the people who are most of the way there, but they fear going all the way because they don't want to be labeled an anarchist. Or in other words, a non-supporter of slavery who thinks that slavery should be abolished. God forbid. Gods forbid. Okay, and yeah, I'm getting a little bit emotional. Because these people are the people who keep slavery going. They're responsible. How much time do I have? 27. Okay. Mainstream media is the next group, who are psychological infants, children. They don't want to determine truth for themselves and report it in any kind of a responsible way or any kind of a direct way. All they care about is a paycheck. That's it. I'll get up there and lie to people for a paycheck. Write what you're told, mainstream media. Thanks, corporate news. The elite couldn't control the people without you. It's true, because these are the people who keep these topics from ever being explored. See, you don't need to eradicate occult knowledge or wisdom. You don't need to. All you have to do is have enough people dissuading people from looking into any of this and call it fringe and cast doubt on it and cast derision on it. The ridicule factor. That's all. And then people go along with the herd like good little sheep and good little slaves. So these people, what they're really saying is, I'm too much of a low-life coward to tell the truth, so I repeat lies for a paycheck. That's all. And again, get as offended as you like. I don't care who you know in these institutions. I don't care who anybody out there knows in these institutions. This is what's really going on deep down inside in the psyche. These people are sick. You have to understand, I'm not just attacking these people. I'm trying to help you, somebody who is partially well, if not all the way well, to explain you're dealing with psychologically ill people. These are broken individuals that need healing and need to be put back together to remember who we really are. And we're not going to do it unless we deal with these issues. It's not going to be done unless the issues on this tree are dealt with. The New Agers, who I call the hopelessly naive, who want to believe, oh, you know, the aliens from Pleiades are coming here in their giant battle cruisers to rescue us from our own ignorance any day now. You know, or no real knowledge is going to have to be done. We're going to have to meditate the world into a new way of being. But you're not going to have to actually study and read books and take up knowledge into yourself. God forbid. That might involve effort and work. And we can't have that, you know. So we're just going to sit in a lotus position and meditate all day. Okay? And the other things, they have just wildly off notions about how actual dynamics of the laws of attraction work that are completely unfounded and don't work the way that they're claiming that they work. Because they don't understand natural law. The New Age movement is put there as the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine to cut people off from a real understanding of natural law. And again, like I said, this presentation really goes hand in hand with my natural law seminar. All right? So that's going to be out probably by the end of this month. It'll be up on my website. It's 10 hours long. You have to watch that seminar when it's released. I go in depth with slides into what natural law is and how it works. All right? So these people are saying, we don't talk about the abuse mommy and daddy put us through. If you ignore it, it goes away on its own. Ignore the negative. Never talk about the negative, ever, 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 because you're giving power to it. And that has absolutely nothing to do with how things really work. You have to expose what's going on. And then the knowledgeable yet inactive. These are all the people, oh, wait a minute. Here, I think I'm doing enough because I fast blast a few emails, or because I go on some forums and have some arguments over some little detail in this researcher's work. You know what these people are? They're a bunch of clowns, okay? They're cowards. Let's call them what they really are. All the people who do this, folks, cowards. Cowards. I'll look right in the camera, I'll look right in their face and tell them. Cowards. Because you don't want to come out, you don't want to put your name on the line, come out with your real name and say, I stand against all forms of slavery, and I'm going to do everything I can to abolish them. Okay? I'll hide behind a keyboard. I'll give myself a little pseudonym or an acronym name. And I'll attack other researchers on the little aspect that I think they got wrong, instead of actually telling people what the truth is in a way that can be readily understood by other people. Okay? They're armchair quarterbacks and they're lazy cowards. Okay? And here's what they're saying. I know all about what's going on in the world. Can't you see how well I'm putting all that knowledge to use? Can't you see what a great job I'm doing? So many people are inactive. Yeah. Order followers are next, the least mature, and yet they're the most responsible. The absolutely most responsible people. Now, how could the least mature be the most responsible people? Well, it's true. These people are the people who have not grown up ever, okay? And yet, they're the most responsible for what's going on in the world. They actually create the police state. These children, who I'm going to put images up on the screen, and if you can just, when I put these images up, I just want you to look into their eyes, okay? And you tell me if these people aren't children. You tell me if you look in their eyes, look into the researchers' eyes I'll put up later, and compare them to these people's eyes. Because they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. You tell me if these aren't psychological children. Okay? Now, there's the archetypal image of the abandoned child. Okay? And here's the abandoned children who are trying to appeal to the approval of mommy and daddy. I want to appeal to the approval of daddy because mommy and daddy didn't pay enough attention to me in real life. So this is my surrogate family. I want to look all the same like a good little boy and girl that does what they're told on command, like a robot. On command like a robot. Look into the eyes of these people. Tell me you don't see psychological children. I'd tell you there's something wrong with you if you don't see it. Okay? Because you have to be completely unconscious not to see that these people have not grown up one iota from childhood. Not one. Yeah, though they're big and bad trying to take other people's rights away on command. Yeah. But here's what they really are, folks. We are the house slaves. We are the house slaves. No lower form of life than a house slave. And you know what? If anybody wants to try, I'll just say this. If anybody wants to try that, to make that a race issue, you go right ahead and try. Because the blood of Chem flows in my veins. Because my ancestors that I've traced back, my ancestral tree, go back to the land of Chem. Okay? So I can speak on that like that. And so could actually anybody else who's telling the truth. It's not a race issue, it's a truth issue. Okay? These are the house slaves. We'd rather enslave our own species, and ourselves included, rather than grow up, develop real courage, and think for ourselves. The researchers whose work I think you should really look into, and I'll get into solutions in a moment, okay? You've got to look into these guys' work. Okay, write them down, look into them on your own. Eric von Däniken, okay? Brilliant work. Chariots of the Gods, The Return of the Gods, and many other works. We have 15 minutes. I'll try to blast through this. Zecharia Sitchin, phenomenal and monumental amounts of work that he's done with The 12th Planet, There Were Giants Upon the Earth, The Lost Book of Enki, and many others. Lloyd Pye, I dedicated the whole presentation to this gentleman. His work with the Star Child skull is phenomenal. You have to check out the book, Everything You Know Is Wrong. You have to go online and download this guy's YouTube videos and watch them all. You have to understand Lloyd Pye's work. It is invaluable to this field of research. Michael Tellinger, most people don't know about him. I think he's gaining more notoriety, and rightly so. The Slave Species of the Gods. You have to check this book out. It is required reading as far as I'm concerned. David Icke, written incredible work, so well sourced too. All the people who attack this guy's work, I guarantee you have never read his books. They've heard a clip, a snippet of one of his videos and say, oh, I disagree with that. You got to understand how well documented this guy's books are, and they're 600-page books, and he's written like 18 of them. Okay? So no small amount of research. It's monumental amounts of research. And I've always said in my work, if the world had a tenth of the courage of this man, we'd be free today. Credo Mutwa, who David Icke brought forward, he's a Zulu shaman. I believe they call them Sanusi in the Zulu culture. You got to check out the video, The Reptilian Agenda. This guy's a library of knowledge. Michael Tessarion. How many people are familiar with this gentleman? Okay. If you're not familiar with Michael Tessarion, I don't know what to tell you. You have to become familiar with him. You have to watch the whole series of Origins and Oracles. How many people have actually sat down and watched all 22 discs of Origins and Oracles? Raise your hand. And there's one person who's not here. I think Jay stepped out of the room. He has 4 people in the room. That's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. This work is one of the most important works in modern history. You have to get these DVDs, get them from a friend, talk to me, I have them, I can copy them for you, okay? You have to watch these DVDs, all right? Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods, Lost Knowledge of the Ancients, Knowledge of the Lost Civilizations. Michael Cremo, Forbidden Archaeology, brilliant work. Somebody who I've been following recently, L.A. Marzulli, brilliant work on the Nephilim and the Watchers. The Watchers video series is one of the best documentary series I've seen recently. I highly recommend it. Comes at things from a little bit more of a biblical perspective, but hey, his research is great. David Hatcher Childress, again, mostly dealing with the technology of the ancients. Trey Smith, another person who's done a lot of great videos on the Nephilim and genetic manipulation of humanity. Georgios Tsoukalos, I think, did a lot of great work in the early parts of Ancient Aliens. He's looking a little tame in this picture, but I like his early work. I think some of the later seasons fell a little bit short of what he was doing in the earlier seasons, but I think the earlier seasons of Ancient Aliens should definitely be checked out. Immanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, about the history of our early solar system. Robert Schoch has done some great work on the dates of some of the ancient megalithic structures. Check out his work as well. Alan and Dallaire wrote the book Cataclysm about the deluge in ancient times. I think that's a book definitely worth checking out. Allegories that we see this story told about in modern fiction, okay? They Live, story about alien takeover of the earth and how only a certain group of people can see them who have the drive and the desire to see the subliminal messages and the mind control that they put out. Roddy Piper was the star, probably my favorite movie of all time. If anyone hasn't seen They Live, it's required viewing. The tales about these two brothers who come to a less advanced civilization, and one of them wants to become a king. The man who would be king, it's the tale by Rudyard Kipling, told in the movies again. And then a remake of this, The Road to El Dorado, which was, I believe, put forward out of DreamWorks. And again, the two brothers, one of them wants to rule the city of El Dorado and get all the gold. They came for the gold. They stayed for the adventure. Oh, what an adventure it is. The story of Thor, of course, is the story of the brothers Enki and Enlil, okay? With their king Anu, who is Odin in the Norse tradition. These are the gods and the Norse name. It's just it's just been retold. This would be Enki, this would be Enlil, and this would be Anu. It's just retold. And of course, the gods have a penchant for earth women. You know, it's all there in Hollywood. They're telling you. The Island of Dr. Moreau, about the genetic manipulation of humanity. This is just an allegory. We're on the island of Dr. Moreau. It's called the Earth, okay? And it says, through DNA experimentation, Dr. Moreau has upset the balance of nature. He has turned animals into humans, and now heaven has turned into hell. Right on the cover of a DVD box. Story about resources being taken from different cultures and mined. Dune, the spice being mined. This is like the Anunnaki coming for the gold. And again, it's an allegory about what we're doing to other countries with oil. And like Avatar, same theme. An extraterrestrial culture comes to another planet, exploits the resources and kills the people. And you know, it's like them coming to the earth for the resources they wanted. And what we're doing, because that's what our parents taught to us, we're doing the same here and exploiting third world countries for their resources. Great allegory. That's why it was so popular, and I think it might still be the top grossing film of all time. The Matrix trilogy, which I've done another series on, video series. This is another allegory about the takeover by non-human intelligence over humanity and making them into a slave race. Again, in this, it's depicted as AI or artificial intelligence, but just substitute the artificial intelligence for these extraterrestrial beings. Substitute AI for ET, and you have the same basic story. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a brilliant allegory about this race of founders who are shapeshifters and who control this other race of reptilian-like creatures who are called the Jem'Hadar, okay? And they keep them on drugs, which is called white, which they pump into their neck, and that's an allegory for adrenaline, keeping the police hopped up and addicted to adrenaline, you know, and keeping them acting as the house slaves for the designs of the founders. It's a great allegory. There's a lot of other allegorical stuff in Deep Space Nine as well, which I don't have time to get into. Perhaps the best allegorical movie to check out regarding this ancient story, which was crushed in Hollywood and crushed in newspaper reviews. Whenever they don't want you to see a movie, they're going to crush it in the reviews to dissuade as many people from seeing it as possible. This is one of the best movies ever made about the true origins of humanity and the ancient story of what happened on this planet. And I guarantee you hardly anybody has seen it. How many people have seen this movie? Look at that. 5 people in the room. Okay? Battlefield Earth. It was written by L. Ron Hubbard, okay? And it was made into a Hollywood movie. Look at the similarities in the skull type, okay? And this is the giants, and he's holding him up by the throat. That's how tall they are, okay? This story, very positive, though, because it talks about the role of knowledge and the importance of knowledge in understanding how to get out of this slave culture, okay? Highly recommend Battlefield Earth. Part 3 and last, I probably have like 5 minutes left, okay? I'll try to speed through this, all right? The unwritten story of our future. It's about understanding the abuse victim cycle and how to get out of it, okay? When a traumatic event or abuse occurs, the abuser, the person who experiences it either identifies with the abuser or the victim, and therefore they continue to repeat the cycle, okay? Only when we have enough knowledge, care, and willpower can we break the abuse victim cycle. And I talk about this a lot in my podcast. Go back to the ones I did on that and check it out. It's about balance between the brain such that we're not in master think or slave think. Again, in my podcast, I cover this extensively. When you're in left brain imbalance, it leads to masculine domination, the suppression of the emotion, and eventually roots us into the lower brain, the reptile brain, okay? If you're in right brain imbalance, okay, that roots us in the mammalian brain, which means that our emotions are out of control, and we're not really stepping up with confidence, with courage, and standing up for our rights. We go into slave think mentality. Healing this divide, balancing both hemispheres of the brain by working with these different brain dynamics holistically is the way out of that imbalance. Genetics versus epigenetics. I just want to say here that I feel the power of consciousness can trump anything that has been done to us genetically. So to leave people with a little bit of hope, the answer is consciousness, and that could totally break any of the genetic programming that these beings have done to us, no matter how deep. Okay, no matter how deeply seated it is. But that's if we take the time to explore the knowledge of ourselves. If you want to look into how epigenetics can trump genetics, really look into the works of Dr. Bruce Lipton, cell biologist. His work, The Biology of Belief, is absolutely essential to that matter. Okay? Self-loathing is the underlying psychological condition that causes people to attempt to abdicate their own personal responsibility, to exercise conscience, and fall into the patterns of willful ignorance, order following, and the justification of immoral behavior. Self-loathing is created when earlier psychological trauma has been suppressed and buried into the subconscious mind, instead of being confronted, dealt with, and healed. The effects of such unresolved trauma often take the form of feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness, whether those feelings are real, suggested, or imagined. And this is the dynamic of a self-loather. I have suffered, therefore I shall cause suffering unto others. That cycle has to be broken, and this is the exact mindset, okay? I've suffered, therefore I'm going to cause suffering, that keeps people in the prison of their own making. 5 minutes, great. Self-respect, from the Latin re, meaning again, and spectare, meaning to look at, is the only thing that can ultimately heal self-loathing, and therefore help to put humanity on the path to healing and conscience. Self-respect ultimately means to take another look at oneself. Respect, to look at again, to look at the self again, to go in and understand the aspects of human consciousness. Okay? These are what I call the 3 R's: respect, remembrance, and responsibility. Respect, remembrance, and responsibility is the path out of this prison, okay? Self-respect, taking another look at the self, remembering who we really are, okay? Self-knowledge, knowledge of self. The ways that we can express our own consciousness is through thought, emotion, and action. This is the real holy trinity that exists within each one of us. It's been called the mind-body-spirit connection, the masculine and feminine aspects together with the creative aspects of the mind, the thoughts, to be unified such that we are a being that as we think, so we feel, so we act, and there's no contradiction between those 3 modes of consciousness. Here's the expressions: thought, emotion, and action, the fulfillments of which are the fulfillments of thoughts are knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. The fulfillments of emotion are true care, empathy, and compassion. The fulfillments of action are courage, willpower, and persistence. This is what humanity needs to develop. If we stay in the failures of thought, emotion, and action, we stay in the prison. The failures of thought are ignorance, foolishness, and naivete. The failure of emotion is apathy, indifference, and callousness. The failure of action is cowardice, laziness, and submission. Okay? That's the basic knowledge chart that we need to take into ourselves and understand how we work, because our controllers know how the human consciousness works, and they've done their best to keep that knowledge from us. We have to understand our own sovereignty. Sovereign is a word derived from Latin, the adverb super meaning above, and the noun regnum meaning rulership or control. Thus, sovereign means one who is above the rulership or control of another, or in a word, free. Sovereignty, the word sovereign, simply means, ladies and gentlemen, not a slave. It doesn't mean anything else. It never has meant anything else. It means that you are the ruler of yourself and no one else rules over you externally. It means you are not a slave. Every person in the world is sovereign, whether they know it or not. Slavery is illegitimate. None of us are legitimately slaves, therefore we are all sovereigns. An individual's personal responsibility to choose right action over wrong action for themselves is always their own. One can only make the claim that they can, quote, abdicate their personal responsibility for such choice, for such decision to someone else. This can never actually be done in reality. More simply put, an individual is always responsible for their own behavior, for their own actions. We need to grow up, think for ourselves, and stop following orders. Following orders is not a virtue. It is the path to total destruction. It is the path to slavery. It should not be looked at as a virtue. Really wrapping this up, the bottom line of all of this is, regardless of how troubled our cosmic childhood may have been, humanity's childhood is over, ladies and gentlemen. Humanity's childhood is over, and a choice stands before us all. That choice is either to enter cosmic adulthood or perish. That is the choice that stands before humanity right now, and is up to each one of us to make. The path to that cosmic adulthood is the understanding of natural law and how to apply it in our lives. That is the master key which the universe has given to us. That is the pathway to freedom that can unlock all the locks on all the doors to all the cages. Okay? Natural law is the answer. Okay? And what the universe is beckoning us and calling us forth to do, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 words, what the universe is beckoning us and calling us forth to do on this planet is to break our chains and to end slavery. To end slavery. When we do that, and not a moment until, maybe we will be able to create a new world that is really worth living in for ourselves and our children, and then maybe we will be able to go off-world and join our other benevolent brothers and sisters in the stars. Thank you very much.